Howdy, folks. Here he is, the Texas Brit, the guy with the stiff upper lip, filling his 10-gallon hat and his cowboy boots, Karl Wolfenden.
Good morning and welcome to Linked AM. And as you know, every week for the past now, 3 months now, we've been coming live talking about the various different things that businesses can do to grow their business. And so I was thinking about, the where I've come from. I mean, I started off in newspapers years ago, and then I went into radio, then I went into TV, and now, of course, it's all merged into different sort of mediums, into different broadcast mediums, including the internet. So the big chatter, and a lot of the things we've talked about over the past 3 months is, how do you engage with people on the internet? How do you make yourself relevant as such? And I was talking to a friend and a colleague that I've worked with for many years, Kent Aurand from RHI Communication, and we were talking about, and he's very print focused, and I said, and that's where his background is, and we're going to have him on the show any second now. We're going to bring him up on the Skype screen behind me. But I was asking him, is print dead? I mean, that's a question, and I think it's a relevant question, and he nearly sort of knocked me over. He said, "No, it's not dead." So, before I go on, let's bring Kent onto the screen, and welcome, Kent. Kent Aurand, RHI Communication and President. So welcome for joining me on Linked AM.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So one of the things that, as I just mentioned, I talked about, is print dead? And I just said that sentence, and you sort of looked at me and sort of went, we need to talk about this in more detail. So here we are. We're on Linked AM. Let's talk about it. So is print dead?
No, absolutely not, and quite the opposite. And we've had a lot of conversations with customers and people directly related in marketing their company in a lot of different ways, and that question comes up fairly frequently. And there's a lot of different ways of addressing it, but in essence, no, print is not dead. It's used very effectively by a lot of different markets, different industries. One just really simple statistic: when you look at retailers, when asked the importance of the type of communication they send to their customers, what do they see the most important? They still say 68% of the dollars they spend are important to go to print versus 8% on digital. Even though they're still trying to get a hold of how digital is really going to work to drive people to their stores or to buy online, they still have such a focus on print that it's hard to deny the effectiveness of it.
So what I've just heard then is that they still feel that the print piece of their communication, their branding, their look and feel, their message, etc., needs to still be in the hands of potential customers.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of different ways of getting it there and thinking of how it's being used. Certainly the media fragmentation and the just influx of digital advertising has changed the way media is, or I should say print is used. But at the end, it still has some of the highest response rates out there. And then when you define on what print is, because you still have, in the traditional sense, an ad agency is going to think of print as either an ROP in your newspaper, or they're going to think of a magazine ad. You look at grocers. When you say print, they're thinking of newspaper, or your inserts or your circulators that are coming in the mailbox. You still have direct mail. You still have all these different ways of communicating via print. But at the end of the day, there is a tactile piece of paper, for lack of a better word, that's in your hands, that's communicating a message that you're going to retain longer than digital. And it also goes through the clutter. I mean, talk to my kids about what they pay attention to. And they're so bombarded by digital advertising and emails and just this constant barrage of digital because they're wrapped in digital. Just look at anyone walking down the street looking at their phone, that when something approaches them from print, whether it's in the mail or some other venue, somebody puts it in their hand, they respond to it faster, better, and they retain the information more, and they appreciate it more.
And it stays with them longer. I mean, a lot of the times, I just heard you say that, social media is instant, it's there, and then it's gone.
Right.
And if you don't capture that person that instant, then, you've got to keep doing that. And that's what we've been talking about in a lot of cases of you got to keep working social media because, you only get to see a one window of your potential customers. With print, what I just heard you say was, it's a physical piece that stays on the coffee table, stays on the countertop or on the office desk as such, and you can keep going back to that to refer to it. And I suppose it's the messaging that you put on the piece of print that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And I guess one of the, I don't want to use the word mistake, but it's some place certainly that can be focused a little bit more by a lot of people is how do you use the media that you're working with? How I create a print piece, for example, is very different than how I'm going to create a banner ad, which is very different than even putting together a social media campaign of any kind. You can still get the same message across, but you need to address the type of media that you're working with. We do an awful lot of campaigns that are multi-channel. Most of what we do is probably multi-channel. And the question is simply, where does print fit in the mix? When we look at, I guess, a project we're really working on right now, it's from a cost standpoint, it's heavily video oriented. We're creating a lot of first generation video content, actually some very high-end video content, to tell a message, but we're going to use print to drive them to this message in a variety of ways. So out of this video content, we're going to produce a 30-second video spot. We're going to do an actual whole behind the scenes, a creative where we're going to have interviews with where we came up with the idea. And then we're creating some microsites so we can get specific people that we want to respond to this, to go to a place where it's going to address them personally. But we're using a print piece. Now, granted, it's going to be pretty unique, but we're using a print piece that's going to drive them to this location to see the content in the first place, and we're going to wrap the whole thing with social media around it. So there is a touch before, there's a touch after, and there's touches during this entire campaign, whether it's print or digital, but each one increases the response of the other. So as I set a mobile IP campaign, for example, in advance of the print, I'm going to see a flatline mobile IP response until that print hits. And my print response is going to be higher than it would because the brand hit them before the mail did. And then suddenly I'm going to get a push on that mobile IP because they saw the print, which is then going to generate all this other response that's going to direct them to social media. It's going to direct them to these microsites. It's going to send some emails back. And then there's going to be another a print spot afterwards that's going to be sort of a thank you. But all of it centers around how that print piece fits in the mold. We wouldn't see any of the response rates that we would if that wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, that fits into a lot of the things we've been discussing here on the show in terms of multiple touch points. But
Right.
but the thing that is always, I think, the problem for a lot of people is how do you, and we talk about the flywheel, how do you get that flywheel to start and then start that sort of bigger engine? And what you've just explained, I think, is that bigger engine. It's the campaign has got multiple, tactics that you're using,
Right.
and you're actually then, as you say, linking people in. Now, depending on where they come in at, they can still receive the message. But I'm interested to hear more about why you think that print piece, does the old jump start on the on the heart of the campaign. What is that, do you think?
A lot of reasons, and here I'll go back to the millennials and even iGens for that matter, because when you look at the people who aren't really your targeted consumer yet, they're inundated by digital media more than anybody because they're absorbed in it. From the time they were kids, they had their phone with them and looking at all this content that's being thrown at them. Millennials still heavily print, heavily digital. Excuse me for that. and so when they get something print related, I have 2 sons, one's 18, one's 21. When they see something that's personalized to them in their mailbox, it provides a different level of communication that they're not really used to, which is why it has such a great response with millennials. They see it, and especially if it's personalized to them, they appreciate it more. They stop it. They can touch it. They can feel it. It has a tactile part to it. It has a presence and a time in front of their face. That's, even if their intent is to throw it out, there's face time that they don't get in digital. Email, you just delete before you see it. Banner ads, if it catches your attention, maybe, but a lot of times it's an irritant. Whereas when it comes in the mail, you may go, oh, I'm not interested in that, but you still saw it and it made an impact far greater than anything digital would. And so if I'm taking something that's highly personalized and it's to you, and I'm using information that I know about you to target you, that makes you stop and it makes you think about it longer than anything else you can put in front of somebody. More than anything that you can get on TV, more than anything you can get in a digital realm. So that's why putting that in that mix is so important, and they all work together. So if I'm, like as I mentioned, if I'm using that mobile ad campaign before print, I'm going to see a bigger increase on both of them, rather than just if I just did print or if I just did a mobile IP campaign, for example. No,
that makes a lot of sense. And you and I have had fun many a time in meetings where, you know, we jump up on the whiteboard and we start to draw that how that right. relationship sort of starts. Because as you say, if it's relevant, then somebody's got to grab hold of it, and then how you take them through that communication chain.
Right.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, Kent, because this has added another layer to the conversations that we've been having here on Linked AM. You know, tell us a little bit more about your company and how do the viewers and the listeners actually get hold of you? Sure.
We're a full-service marketing firm. There's a lot that we do. We have full creative abilities. We have complete marketing capabilities. We do a lot of multi-channel campaigns, as well as we do an awful lot of product merchandising and things of that nature. So we try to look at how everything relates to each other. We try to look at where where the pain points are, to try to how do we merge different things that you might not have thought of that work together, to bring them together to try to make something more effective. Whether that's getting a product out to a particular place, whether that is, in this case, you know, this campaign that got this nice little whiteboard here, just like you were saying behind me, is a recruiting campaign we're doing for a medical company, for example. And that started off with just the conversation of how do you want to increase your business. And so we really kind of specialize on that thought process. You can certainly send an email to me. My name is Kent, K-E-N-T, at RHI Communication, no S, .com. Okay, and we'll throw that up on the website as well and on Facebook, sure. on the Linked AM page. Well, I appreciate, Ken. I know that there are various topics that you're going to come back on and we're going to debate because you're not just print, as you say. You're a full service right. agency. So I want to touch on some of those other subjects, promotional products and things like that. So thanks, Kent, for coming on the show, and we'll have you back on and we can start to drill down into some of those other topics. That's great. Thank you, Karl. Okay.